Dr. Mpho Phalatse, thank you so much for your time. You are coming into this not as a stranger to politics. You sit in council as opposition and, of course, now as mayoral candidate. What are your top 3 priorities for the city of Joburg?
Well, I also served as an MMC for 3 years, responsible for health and social development. But my priorities are really as a response to residents on the ground. I've been on the ground for 61, 62 days now. I think it's 62 days. I've spoken to just about everybody, townships, informal settlements, suburbs, all kinds of settlements, even the business sector as well as civil society. And the cries are the same. The city of Joburg is broken. It's broken. People don't know when they wake up whether when they open their taps, water will come out. They don't know whether they'll have electricity for the whole day. People can't plan. They can't even plan to work. You know, with COVID, a lot of people are working from home. And I'm seeing residents who are saying we can't even function. You know, when we see this is going to come, another outage, we start booking tickets to get out of the city for a while, just so we can be functional. Everybody's asking for us to bring back normality to the city, just a sense of functionality. And that's going to be our priority. We've put together a 7-pillar manifesto, but pillar number 1 will focus on basic service delivery. The reason why we have these outages, whether it's water outages, electricity outages, broken down roads, sewer running down our streets, is because for the longest time, the ANC neglected to maintain our infrastructure. So there was no investment in infrastructure over the 22 years of ANC governance. When we came in 2016, we started to put money aside towards the repair and maintenance of our infrastructure. And unfortunately, 3 years was too short. They came back in and we saw another regression again. That's why we want to come back, and we will be ring fencing a substantial amount towards the repairs and maintenance of our infrastructure, upgrades. And we also want to invest in future growth, understanding that Joburg is an economic hub and that we will continue to attract people into the city. And while we do that, we need to think about where will they live and how will they be accessing services. So that's going to be top on our list of priorities. Of course, safety is a big concern. We want to work in a more integrated fashion with the SAPs and with private policing as well as community organizations, and we want to continue investing in smart policing. The other pillars look at, you know, us being a caring city towards the poor, us being a business-friendly city, a well-run city, an inclusive city with different modalities to the provision of housing, and us being a smart city, particularly considering the effect of COVID-19 on how we function, a lot of us having to function remotely now.
Councillor, how do you see, yourself effecting change practically? It's all nice and well, to have promises, but in practical terms, how do you see yourself, delivering those promises?
So it costs money to render services, and I think the first thing we need to get right is the billing in the city. Last week, I handed a memorandum or a petition rather, to the MMC for Finance, which was signed by over 3,000 residents saying, please sort out the billing. The problem is that when you have 36 billion rands outstanding on your debtors book, that's 36 billion rands that we're not bringing into the coffers of the city, and that's 36 billion rands we don't have to render services. Now, if you look at all the needs on the ground, we can't afford that. So we need to desperately fix the billing. You know that we were supposed to have a SAP upgrade, which was going to assist with the billing system. However, as you know, the Zondo Commission then uncovered a lot of corruption related to that. EOH has since pulled out of the contract. We don't know actually at this point in time where the city is, because when we were in government, we had already started effecting some change. But we definitely need to sort out our billing. We need to make sure that we are collecting revenue. We need to make sure that the people who can afford to pay are paying for services. As you know, there are many people in the city who are not paying for services, not because they can't afford, but because of a culture of non-payment that was, again, inculcated by the ANC politically, to buy votes or whatever the reasons were. It's not working. We need that revenue, because it's because of that revenue that we can render services. So that's a starting point, because otherwise then we're dreaming, talking about everything that we need to do. Once we have the revenue, then we're going to intentionally ring fence money towards, as I said, the maintenance, upgrades of infrastructure, and also investment in future growth. So whether it's electricity, whether it's water, and those are the 2 key areas that people are crying about. What are we going to do about electricity? Well, as you know, in the city, we've got city power supply areas and we've got Eskom supply areas. And we've had lots of complaints, mainly from Eskom supply areas like Soweto, which have been cut off lately Again, because of this culture of non-payment that was left for too long, this ballooning debt that Eskom can't deal with anymore. And what are they doing now? They're just going around and just cutting off everybody. Unfortunately, they're also cutting off the ones who are paying. So the city is saying, or the Democratic Alliance is saying, let City Power take over electricity supply in the entire city. Let's take over all the areas, Ivory Park, Orange Farm, Soweto, and Sandton, are the Eskom supply areas. We want City Power to take them over. But what we also want to do is we want to open up for greater participation by independent power producers so we can stimulate competition and see a lowering of the cost of supplying electricity. We are, of course, concerned about the proposed transition model that the ANC is putting on the table, where it looks like they want the Joburg ratepayer to inherit the huge debt that Eskom amassed over the years. We don't want that to happen. We're vehemently opposed to it as a Democratic Alliance, and we're going to be protecting our ratepayers from having to absorb that. They can't afford it. Also, we're concerned about the aging infrastructure, Eskom infrastructure. We want Eskom to fix that infrastructure first before City Power takes over, because we've got our own infrastructure backlog within City Power, but even within our water networks and other networks, we can't be inheriting broken down infrastructure. So that's another thing that we want sorted out.
Now, if you do become executive mayor of the city of Joburg, what kind of time frames or turnaround time are you looking at on delivering those promises? You know, many a times, or historically rather, government takes a while to deliver on promises. So if you do become mayor of Joburg, time frames on those promises?
Well, I mean, it differs, and we have to be realistic. So we talked about the billing, for instance. When we were in government in those 3 years, we inherited about 100,000 billing queries. In the 3 years, we managed to reduce the number to 9,000. So the rate was about 90 queries cleared per day. So realistically, that's what we'll be able to do. But with the upgrade to the billing system that we are using, we should be able to turn things around a lot quicker. Of course, we have to introduce operational efficiencies also. So a lot of governance investment in how we do things will be bringing in the DA brand of good governance and borrowing from elsewhere where we govern and what's working there. So in terms of the billing, it's something that we can fairly turn around before the end of the term. We should have normalized and stabilized the billing environment. In terms of electricity supply, again, what I said was conditions. We need Eskom to take care of their infrastructure, and then we can take it back. So those negotiations need to happen. In terms of City Power infrastructure, we will start from year one. As soon as we can have our own budget. As you know, election cycles and budget cycles aren't necessarily always aligned. So more often than not, you inherit a budget from your predecessors, and then you start budgeting while you're already in office. But from our first budget already, or the first opportunity to do an adjustment budget, we will already demonstrate a commitment towards heavy investment in infrastructure repairs and maintenance. And we will communicate with residents as to what we can do year on year realistically. The most important thing is to run an open and transparent government. Be open about what you can and cannot do within the resources that you have. But with opening up to external players as well, you increase your resources. So you're able to then achieve more in a shorter space of time if you're willing to have more private sector participation in what you do. And we are pro that, and we're hoping that the private sector will also assist us to meet some of the needs a lot quicker.
Now, lastly from my side, what is Mpho Phalatse putting on the line if you do not achieve the promises that you are making to the constituency, the people of the Joburg today? What do you stand to lose?
Well, the DA has built a strong brand over years. I mean, in Midvaal, I think they've had about 3 terms of a DA government, City of Cape Town, and so many other municipalities across the country. The brand is so strong and so intact, and everyone agrees, whether it's Stats SA, Ratings Africa, the Auditor General, that where the DA governs, we govern well. And that's the brand that I'm bringing to Johannesburg, and that's the brand I need to protect. So I can't drop the ball. I have to make sure that Joburg is counted among those municipalities where the DA governed and governed well. But even more importantly, Joburg is a very strategic city for the country and for the African continent. We're the economic hub. And that's why we attract so many people from elsewhere in the country and even in the continent. And we want to protect that status. We don't want to lose it. And at the rate things are going, I look at Cape Town and it looks like they're about to overtake Johannesburg. I'm thinking we can't allow that to happen. We need to protect Johannesburg. It's such an important city. It's a beautiful melting pot of different cultures and people from different areas. And that's something that we need to protect.
Or Class African city, they call it, huh?
Well, not yet, but we can become if we get the right government in place.